Welcome to the final SportsBeat KC podcast of 2025. It's Tuesday, December 30th, and we've waited almost until the final moment to present our year-end show for the Star and KCUR. I'm Blair Kerkhoff, and we're joined by Star columnists Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian. Instead of reviewing the biggest moments in Kansas City sports for 2025, we're going to present our most influential figures, the biggest personalities, and those that had a major impact on the region's sports scene and could continue to do so into 2026. We've come up with a list of 5, 2 players, 2 administrators, and a coach who helped tell the stories of Kansas City sports in 2025. It could have been a longer list. And then I'll tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. So let's get started. Hello, Sam.
How's it going, Blair?
Good. Vahe, good to see you.
Blair, is that good?
That'll work. That'll
I forgot.
I thought there'd be something on the other end of that, but no, I've got
Good to be
Blair.
with you, Blair.
There you go. All right, there we go.
And Sam.
So what do you think? We're going to do this in list fashion with the personalities that help shape 2025 and going into 2026. I think for the most part, all will play a major role in the sports, shaping the sports landscape of Kansas City for the upcoming year. And speaking of shaping or reshaping the sports landscape, I thought we would start with Clark Hunt, the Chiefs chairman and CEO, who I think we could pick him any year just because of his role with the Chiefs, but really made big news earlier this month and by announcing, along with Laura Kelly, the governor of Kansas, that the Chiefs were going to relocate from Arrowhead Stadium to a spot in Wyandotte County. We still don't know the exact place yet, but move the Chiefs from Missouri to Kansas into a new dome stadium. And we're about a week after the announcement, Sam. There's been some interesting reaction to it, but I think we're starting to get used to the idea of the Chiefs kind of counting down their last few years at Arrowhead.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that there's some people that are surprised by the blowback that this has received, but to be honest, it's people who should be the least surprised by the blowback that this has received. But you're right. We've since covered a football game at Arrowhead Stadium, and it was a bizarre feeling knowing that its days are numbered. I mean, just walking into that stadium felt different to me than it has. I mean, I went to Arrowhead Stadium as a kid. I mean, I've covered them for over a decade now, and much more seriously for 6-7 years, and it's never felt like it did walking in there, just knowing they're going to tear this place down at some point. To be clear, that'll end up probably having to be the county, but it's just a very clear era change that will be for the Chiefs that, like you said, they announced last week, but that change is coming in 2031. So heck, this item can be on our list for 6 years now.
Right. I think it will be a frequent topic of conversation for us. Vahe, I wondered after the announcement was made, we heard Clark Hunt say he thought this is what his father, Lamar Hunt, would have wanted. And it was Lamar that took the Chiefs from Texas to this part of the country. But I also was left to wonder if Clark Hunt lived here and understood the psyche of people who live here, if that would have made it a more difficult decision to move the team across the state line,
Or maybe even, change the decision. Maybe. Yep. I don't. That's a really interesting way to look at it, and the whole lens of Lamar on this fascinates me. One of the narratives that sort of prevailed from behind the scenes with Mark Donovan, the Chiefs president, shared this with us back in St. Joe, was the discussion among the 4 Hunt siblings that co-own the team, and that sort of the starting premise was what would Dad want us to do, and that one of the siblings, he didn't name who, made the point of saying, well, he moved us from Texas. True, and that was a bold and visionary move in a lot of ways. It also, in that case, though, was a matter of survival. They were on a short time frame there with the attendance they were getting competing with the Cowboys. They needed to move. One of them needed to move. So that's a whole lot different than bolstering your multi-billion-dollar business by, getting a sweetheart deal on in another state. It's easy to be a little bit skeptical, I think, about the motivations being all money. And I do sort of feel like in the end, it's really just a money decision. On the other hand, I don't doubt that there was some genuine, are we turning our back on dad? And this is the most enduring and visible living legacy of their dad. I mean, the franchise itself, sure, but Arrowhead is iconic. And it was only a couple of years ago that Clark Hunt still called it state of the art. So there's a lot to unpack in this, and I'm not getting very far in my answer, but it is a strange thing. I just want to quick add one thing to what Sam said. It really is the same sentiment, but I didn't grow up here. Probably my first game at Arrowhead was 25 or 30 years ago. Oddly, I remember I was with a friend who had a plane flown over to ask his girlfriend to marry him. Can't have that at a dome. But I mean, it is a pilgrimage kind of place. I mean, we met people in Germany who were talking about making their once in a lifetime visit here. Last year I met fans who came here and decided to get married because they came to Arrowhead. I have no idea how this new Taj Mahal is going to have that kind of pull, because it's just not going to have the history, for one thing, and it's its own personality that is just going to be gone.
Right. I mean, I think it's going to be a cool building.
I'm sure it will.
It's going to be so cool that it'll be climate controlled as a dome. My sense is a week and a few days later is, I'm not sure Kansas clamored for this, and I know Missouri's hurt by it. And
I assume you mean fans.
Yes, I meant
yes,
the fans. Right. A smart business decision for sure. I mean, when it comes right down to it, he's getting the better deal. Sam, you and I talked about it on last week's podcast. It's a deal you couldn't refuse. But when I heard the politicians in Kansas last week say, we've been waiting on this forever. I've lived in Kansas for 3 decades, and I can't think of one person that has expressed that idea.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're, I understand, because when I wrote last week that I thought that this decision sort of reminded us of the difference between Kansas and Missouri, and to me, my old childhood, like the Chiefs were sort of the unifying presence, and okay, you rooted for Missouri, you rooted for KU, but you all rooted for the Chiefs together, and you look, I mean, I still have friends that are that way today, and to me, that decision sort of reminded us, because I thought there was lots of arguments. There was taunting, I thought, on the Kansas side, and I thought there was a lot of hurt on the Missouri side. But, to me, one of the reasons I thought that it did that is because, what I was going to say is I had some pushback and say, well, it was always on the Missouri side, though. What's the difference? Well, to me, you were born into that situation. Like, nobody expected it to be any different. And then what the Chiefs have done for the last 18 months has pit these two states against each other. And as like you said, Blair, I mean, we talked about it last week. It was a smart business decision, because look at what became of it. It's the best deal that any professional sports team has ever gotten. And but you're right. I mean, it's just been this mixed reaction from fans that, to me, I mean, I think if you had, and look, this is part of their decision, but not the entirety of their decision. But if you had chosen to renovate Arrowhead, I think it would have been understood by all. And this definitely is not understood by all, even though all three of us agree that it's the best business decision, if that's how you look at it. And it is how they looked at it. They called it a business decision.
I love your point, though, Blair. I mean, who's been clamoring for it for years in Kansas? Politicians, right? I mean, and again, Sam, you lived in Kansas, Blair, for a long time. Sam, you grew up here. I mean, you have a feel for the area.
I didn't live in Kansas.
No,
I would never.
I lived in Missouri for a little while.
You did, but I'm just saying you have a feel for the span of the area.
I have had kids born in both states.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, then no one is more situated to speak to this than you.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up here. He's more equipped than I am.
But I went out to Arrowhead on Christmas Eve, the night before the game. Had occasion to drive out there and saw the one fan setting up his tent, getting ready to have his family come, and there was going to be a Christmas Eve night there, and celebrating the fact that they still have this. And the term he used was that it felt like a divorce. And that's what's interesting about this. There was, I think, generally a sort of harmonious sense of what it means in the region before. And now it is, the fabric's kind of torn. Negotiations are part of it. By the way, among the great things in Sam's column that day that he really addressed was just getting at, when did we start measuring our politics by who's willing to throw away more money? You didn't use that term, it's my term. But who's willing to throw away more money to billionaires? And the image of the Chiefs entourage walking in and getting cheered for accepting these multi-billion-dollar offers it's going to always stay with me. And from the way you framed it, Sam.
All right, let's stay with the Chiefs to identify our second most influential person, and that is Travis Kelce, Chiefs tight end, approaching his last game. Do we think? What
Yeah, I think more likely than not. I do think the way this season has gone for the Chiefs, it possibly increases his chances to return, but it's still, to me, far below 50%. My guess is Travis Kelce went into this year thinking it was going to be his last season, and I don't know whether going either 7-10 or 6-11 potentially changes his thinking on that.
I think that's the term you used, Sam, was something that I used in the story last offseason about more likely than not to retire. At the time, that was based on a few things, one of which was, the intensity of his own words on the podcast, talking about how hard it is when you realize you're diminished, basically. Those aren't his exact words, but that was what he was saying, when you can't do the things you used to do. And he was talking a lot about all it takes to get ready for the grind of training camp. It really sounded to me like a guy who was trying to build his own case to himself. I would not at all be surprised if he still hasn't really decided right now. I bet he's sort of leaning one way or another, but hasn't told himself.
I get that point. It's incredible how many times that we get asked about this, and I mean, you're bringing it up for a totally valid reason. It's the only real storyline from the Choose Week 18 game, but that's why I keep telling people, I don't know if his mind is made up. And if you take cues from his brother always waited for 3 straight years. There was retirement talk with Jason Kelce, and for 3 straight years, he made the decision in March. And I think Travis Kelce owes it to himself to take some time away from the emotions of how bad this season has gone and consider, okay, just now from a football perspective, from a life perspective, what's best for me, not based on just on the way this season progressed.
I do think there was a feeling that he pushed all his chips into the center of the table for this season, that he was in such good shape. It worked out in ways maybe we hadn't seen him for a few years. There's no doubt he had a resurgent season. The downside of it is he had at least sort of 3 glaring mistakes that were really costly. And in the body of work, obviously that's just a footnote, but it's the most recent footnote. So I think it's very intriguing, but I would guess that he'd less likely be back than retire, but I would not rule it out at all.
Okay, let's take a break, and when we return, we'll speak to more Kansas City sports influencers in 2025. We're back on SportsBeat KC with star columnists Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam McDowell. I'm Blair Kerkhoff, and we're telling the story of Kansas City sports in 2025 through some of its most influential figures. We've talked about Clark Hunt and Travis Kelce, and let's continue with Pam Kramer, CEO of KC 2026. The World Cup, if you haven't heard, is coming to Kansas City. It's coming to the U.S., to North America, but regionally to Kansas City here in June and July. 6 games. Should be a spectacular sporting event, the biggest in the world. And we keep hearing every match is like a Super Bowl. It's 104 Super Bowls. I'm not sure we're going to get that feeling, but I get it. It's enormous. We're part of it. And Pam Kramer is basically the Kansas City boss of the World Cup. So, Vahe, what are you most looking forward to when the World Cup arrives in June?
Oh, so many things. I do even though I don't think we still have a feel for how big it will be, and I mean that in each aspect, right? Like we don't really know. There might be bursts where there's tens of thousands of people here. It might be times where it's not quite like that. But I really do look forward to the feeling of the world being overlaid on our stage, and vice versa, the world sort of seeing what Kansas City is. I think Kansas City will be very welcoming. I think that the feeling of seeing all these shapes, sizes, colors in our town is going to be forever memorable for people who try to experience it. I fear a little bit that some people will just feel like it's going to be too much and I don't want to be part of it. I think there'll be that element. But I think I've always found this city to be the place that wants people here. And I think this will be no different. The games themselves obviously will be, I'm pretty sure, indelible and spectacular. And how fortunate to have countries, particularly like Argentina and the Netherlands, coming here, because what will come with that will be these fan bases that are among the most traveling and colorful in the world.
Not to mention base camps that we're likely to have, right, Sam? I mean, I'm already starting to hear that. Don't be surprised if top 10 ranked countries camp here. I know England was very interested in setting up a base camp here, and now the Netherlands might be interested in coming to Kansas City. So just a month-long sports celebration in Kansas City.
I feel like I've been saying this for a year now, or a few years now, is that none of us really know what this is going to be like. And, they can try and explain it to us and give us an idea, but I think it's just hard to comprehend and fully grasp exactly what Kansas City is going to be like for, next June and July. And a major part of that, the influence is going to be by which countries are here, because I think we're going to feel at least a piece of their culture while they are here.
Yeah, so we should know in the next few weeks which the countries are going to base camp here. And as you said, Vahe, we already know the countries that are playing here.
And that reminds me that, really, I think one of the most notable weeks we've had was a few weeks ago when we had both the release of the schedule and seeing the transportation plan become tangible. To me, that was really vital in making this a visual event. Now, again, as Sam noted too, there's a lot of gaps to be filled in and what that will really look like. But it gave me more of a sense of assurance about the pace of how everything's being prepared, just to sort of see it. You knew they were working on it, but until you see it, a lot of times it's just sort of left to wonder. So I think that was a big step. I think just the calendar turning will make it feel more real. What I don't know, we've spoken about this a little bit before, what I don't know is when the level of local interest will really ramp up and people will just be talking about it all the time. I don't know that it's the buzz of Kansas City right now.
Still 6 months out.
Yeah.
Maybe get some banners going on down Grand, or you look, and then of course in the weeks leading up to it, you'll see the fencing go up around the Liberty Memorial Museum. So that'll be the Fan Fest place where they're expecting up to 25,000. Every day it's open to watch games, and like it was for the NFL draft a couple of years ago. I think that's going to be really cool. And from where we're sitting, you can't see it because the shades are drawn in our office here, but we're a couple hundred yards away from where that exists. So yeah, it's going to be fun. Really looking forward to it. And so Pam Kramer is on our list of influencers in the Kansas City sports scene, and so is this Royals player. I was thinking about the Royals, what their season was about. They finished 82-80. There were some highlights. Salvador Perez hitting career home run number 300. What's he? Is it 303? Is that where he is?
One or two over, maybe it was 303.
Something like that. But he had 30 home runs on the season, his second 30 home run season of his career. And Bobby Wood Jr., Gold Glove, Silver Slugger. Numbers were a little bit below last year, but top 10 player in the game, number 4 in the AL MVP race. But the player that I landed on was Noah Cameron, rookie pitcher, debuted this season, went 6 1/3 innings. I remember at Tampa, got the win in that game, a hitless 6 1/3.
Sit right back down.
Right. Finished the year with a 2.99 ERA, and one of the frequent topics of conversation about the Royals and forever, it seemed like, was how they couldn't develop starting pitching. And now they seem to know what they're doing when it comes to developing starting pitching.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, he's a good choice, Blair, from you, because it illustrates just how different it is, their development. And look, they lost a key piece of that development this year with Zach Bove becoming the pitching coach of the White Sox, but it's been a minute since I thought a Royals coach would get promoted elsewhere, outside the organization, for their work here when it comes to pitching development. And there's one of them, and that, Noah Cameron's a great example, and the fact he's from St. Joe. And, over the summer, I spent a night in St. Joe as it was this funny thing, because it was Big Slick Night in Kansas City. So with all these celebrities in Kansas City, and you had fans come out at the ballpark. Well, I think it was raining that night, but it was supposed to be like a 5 o'clock softball game or something that got pushed back a little bit. But fans were out there to see celebrities, and I was up in St. Joe, and Noah Cameron was the celebrity up there, even though he wasn't even there. And people were wearing his glasses that they'd given away, some of the goggles type specs that he wears, and they played a video of him talking, and upset with his parents. It was very, very emotional for them, and it's just it was a cool thing, and we don't often see that in baseball. And now we have 2 of these kids in Kansas City that are from here, with Carter Jensen as well, who I think has a very, very bright future. And but you're right. I mean, from a Royals perspective, the picture of Noah Cameron is just the fact that they developed this kid by themselves, and they've had plenty of top 15 picks over the years with the Royals, and who they could not develop, and he's not one of those, and a very impactful player for them.
The other element to this that strikes me is that the contrast with the guy like Chris Bubich, who was thrown into it because they didn't have anybody. And you can name a handful of other guys. They 2020, 2021, these guys are all out above their skis way too early.
Singer, for sure, yeah.
Brady Singer, great example. And some guys prosper by that, but not it's unnatural, right? And so the Royals seemingly had the luxury of, we'll send them right back down. Then, of course, the old adage about never having enough pitching really came to be a thing. But then they kept getting pitching, and I think are in a pretty good spot. I don't know if you ever have a sense of luxury there, but I do think that they're very well positioned there. And in part, it's because now the bottom, what they're producing, is surging up to the top.
Yeah, just a quick no. We finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting, but 2nd in WAR among rookies this year. And of course, Nick Kurtz for the Athletics was just absolutely terrific this year. But I mean, that's how good he was.
Here, the final figure on this list, we dip into the college ranks, and a lot happened in the college sports scene this year. We follow closely 3 schools, but I identified Chris Kleiman, Kansas State football coach, to help tell the story not only of his school, but kind of where college sports is right now. Chris Kleiman had the Wildcats finish below expectation. They finished 6-6, but they won, I think it was the last 2 games to get bowl eligible. And then he resigned a few days after they completed the regular season. He was 54-34 in his 7 years in Manhattan, had a winning record in conference games, won the 2022 Big 12 championship. That was a great game. Felix Anudike-Uzama, Deuce Vaughn, that team, Will Howard, they went down to beat TCU in Arlington. And then he resigns. And although he hasn't spoken, we haven't heard these words from him, through Gene Taylor, the athletic director. At age 58, he was not happy with the way college football was being conducted, the business of college football, NIL, transfer portal, and so he stepped away. So what do we make of this?
Well, a whole lot of things, and some of it is obviously just specific to him. I mean, I'll never forget we were at a Chiefs game the day after, was it at Utah or when they lost the quick game.
A crushing loss at Utah.
Crushing loss at Utah. And I had not yet seen his post-game news conference, but you guys had and called it up. And I must have watched it 20 times over the next few weeks. I mean, especially when I started to try to write about the post-game, the news conference when he retired. And you could not help but connect those dots. I mean, and I don't know to what degree that was just some personal suffering in the job or things that our headlights can't see, and to what degree it really does speak to the state of college football and college sports through him. But Gene Taylor, the athletic director, when he started the press conference, was kind of somewhere between rage and despair. He was so upset about the forces in college sports that he suggested were at play in this. I later got a hold of Gene Taylor about a week later, and he spoke more directly about basically the Wild West of college sports, and he was more specific about it. But that's the takeaway. The takeaway is that college sports are being so distorted, I think, now by all the moving parts that nobody's really able to hold it together. And a week or so later in Columbia, Eli Drinkwitz, the football coach, was talking about how college sports are sick, and it's all emanating from the same aspects.
And we're recording this. College basketball season has already started. Conference play begins for the Big 12 and the SEC this week, and we're hearing stories about roster additions, G League players, NBA draft players joining rosters right now at Baylor and Oklahoma. So it is it's hard to get a grasp of what exactly the rules are anymore of eligibility in college sports.
Yeah, and I thought the best point that I've heard made on this was sort of my sentiment on it, which Gary Bedore, our own Gary Bedore, got from Bill Self last night, which is, look, don't blame the coaches for doing this, because Tom Izzo took a shot at Scott Drew for the fact that he is adding an NBA draft pick to his roster, who's eligible to play immediately. And it's like, well, the coaches are playing by the rule here. This player has been granted eligibility from the NCAA because he's less than 5 years out of high school, and now his clock starts today. And so this isn't on the coaches. I mean, this is on the fact that the NCAA has allowed this to get out of hand. And I mean, God, they announced a new president like within the last year, and is he paying attention to what's going on right now?
Well, I think what's happening is the NCAA, which is on a losing streak of lawsuits and has cost them a ton of money, they're afraid of getting sued. All it takes is somebody to sue them for his eligibility, for their eligibility.
And then everyone's eligible who's in even a remotely similar situation. And I mean, that's how we got this transfer thing. It used to be when you transfer, you just sit out. Well, somebody, like you said, had a lawsuit, and suddenly everyone is eligible immediately always. It's like, well, you have the ability, even not to do it retroactively, but going forward to say, okay, you transfer twice, the second time you got to sit out a year. I don't know who in college is going to disagree with that. It's going to stop this wild, wild west of being able to rebuild your team through the NIL every year. And I don't think that's a bad thing for the kids, but I definitely think it's detracting from the fandom itself. I just think fans feel less and less attached to their teams because they're entirely remade rosters every year. And you don't get to build this continuity that allows, I think, is a major part of fandom in the first place.
Okay, so that is our list to review 5 influential figures in the Kansas City sports scene for 2025. Going into 2026, Clark Hunt, Travis Kelce, Pam Kramer, Noah Cameron, and Chris Kleiman. Before we wrap it up, Sam, I wanted to ask you I've got 2 more names for you, and I wanted to just get a quick thought from you. We started the year with Peter Vermees as the head coach of Sporting Kansas City and Vlatko Andonovski as the head coach of the KC Current. Sporting, of course, got off to a terrible start. The Current had an incredible regular season, but neither one is the head coach of their club right now. And because of that, we really are changing eras for those teams.
Yeah, it's kind of a jolt, both of them. I think, the Peter Vermees one was much, much more expected. I mean, it had been 2 consecutive years that I'd gone out to the facility and talked to ownership about, how much longer basically what's the expectation here, and I think we could see that coming. And but I mean, the Vlaco one I think was very stunning to a lot of us. But you're right. I mean, even though Peter Vermees had been there much longer, was it 16 years? It was 2007, 2006 that he took over.
He was the fourth longest tenured coach in the world. At whatever it was, 15 or 16 years.
I think it was 2006, late 2006 that he took over on an interim basis, maybe, or maybe that was just as the technical director. But he'd been involved for almost 2 decades, and I've been out to the facility just twice since then, and it's weird. I mean, I covered that team on a day-to-day basis, and I never walked into that facility without Peter Vermees, being the guy who had the huge office on the bottom floor, and it's bizarre. I still haven't been into that office. But it was so bizarre that the assistant coach who took over, Kerry Zavagnin, on an interim basis for the rest of the year, who will not be the full-time coach next year, but he wouldn't even move in there to the office of the head coach. And so, I mean, I think that's the best illustration of just how different it's going to be around there. But, it's a team that's in need of change.
Right. Great conversation. Thanks, guys. When we return, I'll tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney is joining us on what we call What's on My Radar in Kansas City sports this week. And there are a few things going on, like, as we said earlier, the beginning of conference play in the Big 12 and SEC men's basketball. But it's also Week 18 in the NFL, the final week, and the Chiefs find themselves in a different spot from previous seasons in this game, don't they, Pete?
Yeah, this is the end of the misery in a way, right? Like, put the Chiefs out of their misery. I think as you look at the draft order right now, right, the Chiefs sit pretty well in terms of having a top 10 pick. And so you'd probably be better off losing this game. But this is Chris Oladokun versus Kenny Pickett. So it really can go either way and the lowest of the low.
Right. So I don't think I mentioned they're at the Las Vegas Raiders for this game, and they're playing at 3:25 on Sunday. And
the only reason, by the way, is because the Raiders are not going to have a game at 10 a.m. If there was any way for this game to be earlier, it would be.
Right. The Chiefs played pretty well on Christmas night against the Broncos, better than expected. They were a 13.5-point underdog and lose by 1 score, led the game for a good part. So no turnovers, only 2 penalties. One was a huge one, the Chris Jones offside. But do you expect the Chiefs to play well this weekend?
I think the thing that kind of surprised me on Christmas was they were functional. And against a team like the Denver Broncos, who seems to play down to competition, you're going to be in that game. And the Chiefs were. I thought Chris Oladokun played a lot better than his numbers dictated. It kind of was a laughable yardage at the end of it, but I thought for what he was asked to do, did it well enough. And it does make for somewhat of an interesting finale if you just like football in general. We know there's nothing to play for. The Raiders have kind of punted. Max Crosby is clearly healthy, as he's showed on social media, but they've shut him down for the season with the hope of keeping that pick and all the control in the draft. And so just to wrap up, I think the bigger item on everyone's mind is it Travis Kelce's last game? I mean, that to me transcends whatever this game means.
And we expect him to play, right? Along with Chris Jones, Nick Bolton, the healthy starters and the stars.
Yeah, and I still wonder if it is the last game for him. I know that it seems that way. All the indications are that way. And just in case it is, I think Andy Reid and Travis Kelce himself are going to go in and play it like it is the last game and give him some opportunities and so on. I do find it interesting. I mean, we don't have to dive back into the Travis Kelce question because at this point I think it is still all speculation, but the 2 years leading up to Jason Kelce's retirement, he didn't really make the decision until March. And so I think everyone is going to hope that there is an answer soon, and maybe that'll come. But this guy tends to follow his brother, and I think he's going to really take some time to think about it. If I had to guess, I mean, I feel like it's in the 75 to 80%, he's probably done range, but I do think there is the Mahomes question. Does he want to have his last pass from Chris Oladokin? Do you want to finish like this when you've had so much success in years prior? Can you make that decision 2 years in a row? Because I think that's what led him to coming back last year. And so a lot will go into it, but this could very well be his final game. And I do think that with that in mind, Andy Reid will scheme him up in some fashion to maybe get some production.
Seems like that's what happened last week against the Broncos. Well, whatever happens, the Chiefs, who were a popular pick in the preseason to appear in their 4th straight Super Bowl, will finish 3rd in the AFC West. But it's been a crazy year with the Broncos, the Patriots, the Bears up, the Chiefs, the Lions down, and just the NFL. It's...
The Bills barely got in. The Bengals didn't. The Ravens have to play their way in. So a very unique year in the NFL. And look, I know that even when it's not a Chiefs game, it could be any sport, Kansas City does well. So we know that this is a city of sports fans in general. This is going to be an incredible and unpredictable football tournament that I think, the Chiefs aren't in it. I think we're going to be looking forward to the draft in that sense, but I think there's some good football and some very interesting football left to play.
That's Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney. Thanks, Pete.
Yep.
And thanks to our SportsBeat KC production crew of Gabriella, Lacey, Suzanne, Hogan, Irvin, Zhang, and Monty Davis, and to our editors Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.